Okay, so I'm gonna go over today The Dead from Dubliners, just as a review of its plot and some of the main points to discuss. So, Dubliners is basically a series of encounters through the perspective of Gabriel, our main character. Gabriel is Miss Morgan and Miss Julian Morgan, Kate Morgan and Julian Morgan. He is their nephew. Kate and Julian are spinsters. They are throwing their annual Christmas party, which is on the Feast of the Epiphany, which is, of course, in keeping with the rest of Dubliners and the idea of the Epiphany. Lily, the caretaker's daughter, who is literally run off her feet, has been struggling to get ready for the party and to keep up with the arriving guests. She is also one of the first people to greet Gabriel when he finally arrives late. The party includes some of familiar characters that we've seen before in Dubliners, not the exact characters, but we have similar characters like Freddie, who is an alcoholic. He always shows up drunk. There's Mr. Brown, who inappropriately hits on some of the younger women. We have Kate and Julia, the spinsters, who are living with Mary Jane. So a lot of the same kind of characters that we see all culminating here in the finale. The three women who are hosting the party are tense because Gabriel, their favorite, has not arrived. When he finally does arrive after 10, he makes a comment that his wife Greta was taking a very long time to get ready. They have a little bit of friendly banter about the idea of galoshes or overshoes that Gabriel has brought back for her, the latest thing from Europe. These are overshoes to wear to protect your feet in the snow. As Lily helps Gabriel unpack his things, Gabriel notices her slim body and her pretty looks and then makes a comment on the possibility that she will soon be getting married now that she is finishing up school. Lily retorts bitterly about the predatory nature of men, and she basically tells him that her love life is none of his business. He then tries to tip her, which highlights their class difference, and that makes the situation even worse. But readily she does, eventually she does accept the tip. But the whole exchange is awkward, and that kicks off a series of awkward encounters that Gabriel will have throughout the party. At the party, Gabriel nervously tries to rehearse his speech in his mind. He kind of pompously worries about quoting poets that the guests might never have heard of. He doesn't want to look as if he's flaunting his better education. And this is a speech that he gives every year. His aunts task him with giving the formal toast at the dinner. So this is, again, a repetition, something that they do without really thinking about. And Gabriel spends a lot of his time worrying about how other people will perceive him. He wants to be perceived as the learned writer, the one who is cosmopolitan, but he also doesn't want to come off as pompous. Okay. So Gabriel also here listens to Mary Jane playing her professional sounding piece. That means that she has a special piece of music that's designed to show off her technical ability. Gabriel thinks back to his mother, who has since passed away, who was the only one of the sisters who had no musical talent. And he remembers how his mother was not very fond of his wife, Greta, but later, Greta was the one who actually cared for Gabriel's mother. So this also highlights a theme early in the story about the living and the dead blurring together in one kind of setting. Okay, the story's probably most important or interesting encounter features Miss Ivers. Miss Ivers is a contemporary of Gabriel. She was a fellow student with him, although she would have attended the all-girl college. Gabriel would have attended University College Dublin, which at that point was all men. But they have known each other, and they're colleagues, professional colleagues. Miss Ivers dances with Gabriel and then criticizes him for writing for a conservative paper, which would have been a pro-Britain paper. She teases him. He defends himself by saying that he is only writing book reviews for the paper. He's not writing for them in a political stance. But she takes umbrage at that being a very pro-Ireland person herself. She teases him by calling him a West Briton, which would be someone living in Ireland who only defines themselves by their relationship to England. And this rattles Gabriel. He is clearly upset by what she says. She gets under his skin. The conversation then continues to their vacations coming up, and Gabriel says he's going bicycling on the continent in Europe. And Miss Ivers again says, why don't you visit your own home country, go to the Aran Isles? And Gabriel eventually just responds, I'm sick of Ireland, that he doesn't want to do anything involving Ireland. His wife, Greta, clearly expresses an interest in going to the Aran Islands, but Gabriel dismisses her. And that shows us that there's a little bit of tension between Gabriel and Greta. Gabriel is kind of maybe like James Joyce himself, a writer who wanted to be more cosmopolitan, who wanted to be more a part of the contemporary artistic scene going on in the rest of Europe. And Gabriel seems to view Ireland as being somewhat behind and in culture and in other areas. Okay, so something's going on in the background too. Freddie does arrive and he's drunk as usual. Gabriel checks on him. He's kind of tasked by his aunts to look after the guests. Julia sees Mr. Brown flirting. Mr. Brown is too old to be flirting with the young men. So these are kind of social awkward things that happen every year. Mr. Brown does share an anecdote or two. And he also signals that he is going to help keep an eye on Freddie, and the party continues. Okay. And then after some time, they eat their dinner after Gabriel gives this toast, where oddly he commends the hospitality of the Irish, which is strange because he spent a lot of this story kind of dismissing Irish culture. In his toast, he emphasizes the great traditions of the Irish. And that tells us that Gabriel is very worried about how he's perceived by others, but his inner feelings are a lot of times different from what he outwardly portrays. If you read the passage that describes the dinner at Gabriel's feet as he is giving the toast, the dinner is described almost in militaristic terms. There are squads of food. There are rival ends. There are little ministers, almost like generals, in the jellies and the salt and pepper. So those, even though this is a Christmas dinner, it's described in a way that is militaristic and almost as if they're sitting down for a battle. And we know that whenever characters sit down to eat, they very often, that symbolizes communion. Here, it seems like we're gearing up for conflict more than communion. Okay. All right, so later as the guests are trying to get home, they open the door and they see the cold winter air and the stormy, snowy weather. Gabriel tells a little bit of an anecdote about a horse named Old Johnny, his grandfather's horse who worked at a mill and had to walk in circles. That was his job at the mill. And then after the horse retired and could no longer work, it continued to walk in circles. So that anecdote also reminds us of doing things in circles, doing things for routine without much purpose. As Gabriel is getting ready to go, he sees his wife standing near the top of the first flight of stairs in the shadow, and she's listening to the Lass of Ogram singing the song that Mr. Darcy is singing. This song seems to have caught her in some kind of mood of nostalgia. She looks very beautiful in the shadows as Mr. Darcy sings, and Gabriel mistakenly believes that those feelings are for him. As they walk home or walk to a place where they can find a cab, Gabriel looks very lovingly at his wife. He is getting excited with desire for her, and he is filled with love and infatuation for her, but her mind is elsewhere. She then reveals that the Lass of Ogram reminded her of a boy that she once knew who sang that song. Gabriel is angry about this, but he tries again to hide his true feelings. He asks her if she was in love with him, and she admits that they courted. Gabriel asks to hear more, and Greta then tells him all about Michael Fury, the love of her young life. Michael Fury was ill. She portrays him as being kind of a delicate man, someone who was not long for the world. He was sickly, and even though he was sickly, he came to her window before she had to go away and wanted to sing to her, sort of Romeo and Juliet style, which, if you were paying attention, there was a picture of Romeo and Juliet at the Morgan household hanging on the wall, which foreshadows this conversation. Michael Fury catches ill singing to Greta out in the cold and dies very young. She says, "He must have died for me." As she finishes the story, she kind of collapses into sobs until she finally goes to sleep. By this point, they're back in their bedroom, and Gabriel watches her sleeping. Gabriel realizes in that moment that he has never known the kind of love that Greta and Michael felt for each other. He thinks about mortality, his lovely old aunts, and that soon he will have to return to their home for their funerals. He also thinks about Michael Fury and his passion, and he realizes that the shadow of mortality is on all of us, and Michael Fury, although he lived a short time, he lived a life full of meaning and passion, and that is ultimately what we should strive for, is to make the use of the time that we have. So there are actually two epiphanies in the dead. There is Greta's, which begins when she hears the song The Lass of Ogram, and she is realizing the full nature of her love that she now lacks in her life, and her longing for Michael Fury. Gabriel, his epiphany begins when he hears his wife talk about her love for Michael Fury, and it's fully explored in the last pages of the story. What to note about the epiphanies? They are initiated by sensory experiences. Greta hears a song, Gabriel touches Greta, he feels her trembling, and when he begins his own thoughts, they are sparked by the touch of the cold air in the room. Both revolve around memory of what is and what might have been. Both blur the line between the living and the dead. Michael Fury is literally dead, but still alive in Greta's memory. Gabriel is literally alive, but emotionally dead because he has never loved to that extent. The epiphanies also reveal the different facets of both central characters and the essential aloneness and isolation of any individual. The very last lines of The Dead are some of the most beautiful in all of Western literature. It ends as Gabriel is looking out onto the snowy outside, and he's thinking about the snow, which falls both on the living and the dead. I'll just read this last part here. It was falling on every part of the dark central plain, on the treeless hills, falling softly upon the bog of Allen and farther westward, falling softly into the dark, mutinous Shannon waves. It was falling too upon every part of the lonely churchyard, on the hill where Michael Furey lay buried. It lay thickly drifted on the crooked crosses and headstones, on the spears of the little gate, on the barren thorns. His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe, and faintly falling like the descent of their last end upon all the living and all the dead. So the missing piece of Dubliners is Michael Furey. And although the chapter is called The Dead, the character Michael Furey, who is physically dead, is much more alive than any character that we've seen so far. Some things to highlight from your study guide. The snow symbolizes purity, but also death and paralysis. Okay, the irony of the music here, again, that triggers Gabriel's memory of his mother who did not approve of Greta, even though Greta is the one that eventually took care of her on the deathbed. Okay, we went through Molly Ivors. Okay, and their argument. Okay, the toast. Okay, so these are some of just the suggested answers. I think we pretty much went through all of this. But if you are having any other questions about the dead, make sure to bring them up in class before we take the final quiz, or message me, okay, if you were only able to access this digital lecture. Okay, that's it.